So a little while ago, I put out a documentary called Violence on Both Sides. The documentary largely looked into the actions of militant Marxist and redneck revolt organizer Dwayne Dixon, who bragged on Facebook and admitted several times since that he raised his rifle and perhaps chased James Fields during the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally shortly before James Fields caused the death of Heather Heyer. After this, but before he was acquitted of carrying a weapon to the terror of the people, he was invited to lecture at the Harvard Carr Center for Human Rights, where a #Resist School was in session, and some high school students visiting for the day were sat. And the man who invited him, Professor Timothy McCarthy, was at first hesitant to embrace Dixon's point of view that violence was a useful and acceptable form of protest against the Trump presidency. Throughout the presentation, he became more accepting, eventually adopting Dixon's point of view.
You talked about the crisp evidence of the liberal university's complicity in fascist whatever. Fascist creep. Part of it is the separation of logic from emotion, which has been a misogynist project. It was also an enlightenment and racist project. And it's a deeply anti-left, anti-progressive project. Right? That this may indeed be a moment that calls for a more robust integration of tactics and strategies that include both violence and nonviolence. All sorts of ways in which we see the left doing this because of an articulation, a sense, perhaps quite real, that we are indeed at war and that this is a different kind of phase of war, a fascist state under the Trump-Pence regime. So, but if we all bear arms, where does that?
I mean, I'm a full abolitionist, and yeah, let's get rid of the military. Let's get rid of the full arsenals that compel all of us into this position.
In a follow-up video, I looked into resist school cabals at Harvard and Berkeley, and there I found, through their own videos, how they manipulate elections, how they buy protesters, how they carpool protesters across state lines, using them to disrupt private events and to create the illusion of mass grassroots dissent among the electorate. And now for this video, I'm going to look deeper into the funding. And now you gotta understand, these were all one video to start with, and I've just been chopping and butchering, and it's been a lot of work and kind of a lot of aggravation because I haven't been able to move on for almost a month now. And that's partially because I'm getting busy as well, but that just makes it even harder to concentrate on such a huge project. But I think it's going to be worth it because there's some pretty crazy stuff here, some Soros-style backing.
Somebody's just like, hey, subscribe to my channel, put a link. It's like, no, I don't think so.
What was the name of that channel?
I don't know. Some liberals get the bullet too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sounds like a great channel.
Timothy McCarthy, adjunct lecturer in public policy, award-winning scholar, teacher, public servant, and social justice activist, who holds a joint faculty appointment in Harvard's undergraduate honors program in history and literature, the Graduate School of Education, and the John F. Kennedy School of Government. Since 2008, he has also been the core faculty and program director at the Carr Center for Human Rights Policy, and on April 5, 2017, he delivered the inaugural lecture to launch Resistance School, an online learning hub for progressives who want to reclaim, rebuild, and reimagine America in the Trump era. Now, I've looked at this biography in some of my other videos, and we've already looked into the Harvard and Berkeley Resistance School cabals. Now, what we're going to be looking at this time is the money and influence that goes around these power cabals. He has been awarded fellowships and funding from the Mellon and Ford Foundations, Massachusetts Historical Society, Mass Humanities National Endowment for the Humanities, Open Gate Foundation, David Bohnett Foundation, and Charles Warren Center for Studies in American History. I fully expected Open Gate Foundation to be Soros connected. That wasn't it at all. The Open Gate Foundation Harvard Gender and Sexuality Caucus, supporting LGBTQ+ Harvard alumni, students, faculty, and staff around the world. In 1987, members of the Harvard Gay and Lesbian Caucasian. I don't know if that's a misspelling on the Harvard website, but let's just go with it. Now the Harvard Gender and Sexuality Caucus established a private charitable foundation, the Open Gate, a fund for gay and lesbian life at Harvard University. The Open Gate has tax-exempt status, and all contributions are tax-deductible to the extent allowed by law. Leave it to the lawyers at Harvard to figure out a way to make being gay tax-deductible. The generosity of caucus members has enabled the Open Gate, there's got to be more than a little innuendo in that name, to provide funding for a variety of activities and events initiated by LGBT students, faculty, or organizations. The Open Gate offers guidelines that explain how to apply for grants. So I guess you could say it pays to be gay. Dr. McCarthy is the director of Art of Human Rights and host of Resistance Mike. Let's see what Resistance Mike is. Once again, it is exactly what you would expect. Artists performing truth power with the socialist fist as usual. And Resistance Mike, it turns out, is part of the Art of Human Rights series, an ongoing collaboration between the American Repertory Theater and Harvard Kennedy School's Carr Center for Human Rights Policy. The host is Timothy Patrick McCarthy. I'm wondering if I can find some of these Resistance Mike episodes. That would make an interesting video, perhaps. I'd kind of like to see what they get up to at these fucked up places. There's Oberon, the second stage of Art, which looks like a gay nightclub. So am I right to say that this is a tax-deductible gay nightclub, operates on grants? Is that what I'm seeing here, or am I reading Timothy McCarthy's biography wrong here? I am being a little facetious. I don't think it actually exists off of grants, but it does look like it has some sort of tax-based funding. And because it's what we do here, of course, I looked at Oberon, where they have events like the Bearded Ladies, the Gender Explosion Forum, or Buttcracker hosted by Lucifer Christmas. And during the event, they hold a raffle fundraiser for the Asatush's Bail Fund, whose interesting logo seems to portray the socialist fist tilting the scales of justice. And so what they do is post bail for criminals straight out of arraignments, because the radical left hasn't met a criminal that they haven't loved. Oberon also hosts Club Drosselmeyer, where people dress up like 1940s soldiers and spies and relive the good old days. A frequent media commentator, he is featured in several documentary films and has appeared on NPR, BBC, CBS News, Air America, Bloomberg, because of course, Al Jazeera, Democracy Now!, HuffPost, Big Think, and has published in the Daily Beast, Salon, of course, Boston Globe, HuffPost again, and The Nation. Now I call them cabals because these are groups of people with vast amounts of wealth and social and political power to recruit politicians in power and to promote people into power. And we're not just talking high-paying jobs or academic roles. We're talking about elected positions. The David Bohnett Foundation are devoted to developing the next generation of municipal leaders, empowering society through the next generation of leaders. At UCLA Luskin, students in public policy, social welfare, and urban planning are given hands-on responsibilities in the City of Los Angeles Mayor's Office. At NYU Wagner, 3 fellows per year are given the opportunity to engage in the challenges of governing New York City. At Gerald Ford School of Public Policy, leadership and public service fellows apply the academic training they receive at the Ford School to benefit the people and government of Detroit, Michigan. And at Harvard, the David Bohnett Leadership Fellows Program, in partnership with the Gay and Lesbian Leadership Institute, is designed for progressive, senior, and mid-career executives from state, country, and local governments, as well as their elected counterparts. Because the program and its curriculum thrive on the political expertise and real-world experience of its esteemed participants, fellows for each class are chosen to represent a full spectrum of governmental levels, functional responsibilities, geographic distribution, and diversity in the LGBT community. So far, this foundation has contributed more than $100 million in grants to socially active organizations and $6.6 million to leadership initiatives. Now, some of you watching may be disappointed, but look, I'm sorry. We can't give all the credit to George Soros. But for now, hold the fuck on. Are you telling me they had the gall to call themselves the Brave New Foundation? Alright, well, this is going to be an interesting aside. The scope of this video just keeps getting bigger and bigger. But that is the point, to dig deep. So the Brave New Foundation also makes brave new films. And they do billboard campaigns around elections, have your papers ready, racial profiling just ahead, paid for by the Brave New Foundation. I wonder if they also donate to INGSO. Then again, they probably would. And here's a glance around their homepage, and yes, 16 Women and Donald Trump is a film that they produced, and no, it's not a porn. It's actually on their YouTube channel. And also, you can apply to be a Brave New Fellow. Brave New Films has over 100,000 subscribers, and still gets fewer video views than I do with 200 subs. And that could be because they're a joke. I mean, quite literally. Listen to this clip. I think it's a fucking joke.
I'm designed to teach. People see an educator, a professional, an author, a public speaker, bachelor's, master's, doctorate. Then they see 20-something years of teaching. I have the highest level of learning, and I am literally on welfare.
The corporate model is pushing professors into poverty.
The perception was that I had this cushy, easy life. Surely you make enough money to dress professionally, and the answer is no. I didn't make enough money to dress professionally. I was just surviving.
How can we help our students when many of us are on food stamps?
I don't want some student to say, I want to be just like you, professor. Be like me. I'm broke. I invested in my education in order not to ever come here. And somehow or another, I'm at the welfare office.
And what would your socialist banner be without a few streaks of blood? The Dave Bohnett Foundation has given over $110 million to fund many political agendas, as well as large amounts of money which are given to fund the arts. The Harvard Carr Center receives relatively little of this funding. Most of the money goes to LGBT charities, anti-gun effort, progressive policy pushing, and in asserting social and political power over regional governments. But we'll get into that. I got a nice chuckle out of the Huffington Post Investigative Fund. I didn't know they were now a charity case. You might be familiar with the Soros-backed Media Matters for America. The David Bohnett Foundation gives a similar amount of money at $800,000 to Media Matters for America. And here's something really interesting. This is why I like to dig. A Center for Study of Men and Masculinities, Stony Brook University. Transgender and gender non-conforming children in their support networks research.
Now, Kimmel is a superstar in the sphere of high-powered, socially acceptable discussions of gender. He lectures all over the place, he liaises with government ministries, and he was the first man to deliver the International Women's Day lecture at the European Parliament. He's beloved by big-time activists like Jane Fonda and Gloria Steinem, and when we read about his version of masculinity studies, we can understand why. Unfortunately, the rest of the article makes it clear that masculinity studies, as Michael Kimmel has developed it at Stony Brook University, where he founded a Center for the Study of Men and Masculinities, is really classic man-blaming feminism, but with a more exclusive focus on masculinity as a problem needing to be fixed.
So what's wrong with supporting the arts? Unless I'm sort of a Luddite or Puritan, it seems like the sort of thing that any reasonable person should support. Putting aside all the wealth and influence the Bohnett Foundation exerts, let's look at just their arts and education donations, and why I see a problem with them. According to Bohnett, he is particularly interested in art and artists that reflect social justice, fairness, and equality. He is a current trustee of the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. From 2001 through 2014, the Bohnett Foundation donated $8.8 million to the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. He is the former board chairman 2015 to 2017 and the current chairman of the executive committee of the Wallace Annenberg Center for the Performing Arts. He is on the board of directors for the Los Angeles World Affairs Council and is on the board of trustees of the University of South Carolina. His directorship involvements also include having been a board member of the California Community Foundation. In 2016, Bohnett donated $15 million to the USC Village at the University of Southern California. The endowment will fund the David C. Bohnett Residential College, which will focus on social justice and community service. The Bohnett College will be a student community that integrates living and learning for up to 320 students, plus faculty in residence and support staff. The $15 million donation also established a leadership fund at the USC's Price School of Public Policy for a 2-year fellowship in public policy at the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. It will also endow a chair in social entrepreneurship at the USC Marshall School of Business. He was also a chairman of the Los Angeles Philharmonic Association from 2008 to 2013, where he was instrumental in recruiting Gustavo Dudamel to become the orchestra's music director. In December 2014, Bohnett donated $20 million to the LA Philharmonic. $10 million of that endowed the David C. Bohnett Presidential Chair, ensuring that the orchestra will always have the funds to recruit and pay a first-rate president and CEO. The other $10 million created the David C. Bohnett Presidential Fund for discovery and innovation to make the LA Phil a model 21st century orchestra through innovative programming, new audience development, including via digital routes, and social responsibility. In the Hamptons, he is on the advisory council of the nonprofit iHamptons, a network organization and hub for entrepreneurs. His sister, Wendy Bohnett Campbell, is a past president of the board of the Dayton Philharmonic, and his brother William is a retired corporate attorney and on the national board of the Smithsonian Institution. Do you see what I mean? This one family is able to control much of the rise and fall of America's artistic, creative, and entrepreneurial futures. Similar efforts to control the art and culture scene have occurred in the recent past, and in fact at the hands of the CIA, and this is of their own admission. This cultural cabal, which operated in Europe, led by philosophy professor and likely CIA agent Sidney Hook, formed the Committee for Cultural Freedom with his mentor John Dewey, about whom Bertrand Russell had some very foreboding words.
Chapter 30. John Dewey. John Dewey, who was born in 1859, is generally admitted to be the leading living philosopher of America. He has never been what might be called a mere philosopher. Education, especially, has been in the forefront of his interests, and his influence on American education has been profound. When Dewey became professor of philosophy at Chicago in 1894, pedagogy was included among his subjects. He founded a progressive school and wrote much about education. From the strictly philosophic point of view, the chief importance of Dewey's work lies in his criticism of the traditional notion of truth, which is embodied in the theory that he calls instrumentalism. Truth, as conceived by most professional philosophers, is static and final, perfect and eternal. In religious terminology, it may be identified with God's thoughts, and with those thoughts which, as rational beings, we share with God. The perfect model of truth is the multiplication table, which is precise and certain and free from all temporal dross. Dewey makes inquiry the essence of logic, not truth or knowledge. He defines inquiry as follows. Inquiry is the controlled or directed transformation of an indeterminate situation into one that is so determinate in its constituent distinctions and relations as to convert the elements of the original situation into a unified whole. He adds that inquiry is concerned with objective transformations of objective subject matter. Formally, it would have been said that inquiry is distinguished by its purpose, which is to ascertain some truth. But for Dewey, truth is to be defined in terms of inquiry, not vice versa. He quotes with approval Peirce's definition. Truth is the opinion which is fated to be ultimately agreed to by all who investigate. This leaves us completely in the dark as to what the investigators are doing, for we cannot, without circularity, say that they are endeavoring to ascertain the truth. Let us continue to consider the example of a general planning a battle. His reconnaissance planes report to him certain enemy preparations, and he, in consequence, makes certain counter-preparations. Common sense would say that the reports upon which he acts are true if in fact the enemy have made the moves which they are said to have made, and that in that case the reports remain true even if the general subsequently loses the battle. This view is rejected by Dr. Dewey. He does not divide beliefs into true and false, but he still has two kinds of beliefs, which we will call satisfactory if the general wins, and unsatisfactory if he is defeated. Until the battle has taken place, he cannot tell what to think about the reports of his scouts. Generalizing, we may say that Dr. Dewey, like everyone else, divides beliefs into two classes, of which one is good and the other bad. He holds, however, that a belief may be good at one time and bad at another. This happens with imperfect theories which are better than their predecessors but worse than their successors. Whether a belief is good or bad depends upon whether the activities which it inspires in the organism entertaining the belief have consequences which are satisfactory or unsatisfactory to it. Thus, a belief about some event in the past is to be classified as good or bad, not according to whether the event really took place, but according to the future effects of the belief. The results are curious. Suppose somebody says to me, "Did you have coffee with your breakfast this morning?" If I am an ordinary person, I shall try to remember. But if I am a disciple of Dr. Dewey, I shall say, "Wait a while. I must try 2 experiments before I can tell you." I shall then first make myself believe that I had coffee and observe the consequences, if any. I shall then make myself believe that I did not have coffee and again observe the consequences, if any. I shall then compare the 2 sets of consequences to see which I found the more satisfactory. If there is a balance on one side, I shall decide for that answer. If there is not, I shall have to confess that I cannot answer the question.
Keep America great. For so many people, that's racism.
Yeah, but that's because of the mainstream media's narrative that's painted Donald Trump as a racist. I don't agree with the narrative. I'm out here to try to share that that narrative is skewed.
As a human being, you should pay attention to fear and not logic.
Wait, you said pay attention to fear and not logic?
Yes.
I should have paid attention to emotions and not facts?
Yes.
Why would I pay attention to emotions when
that are real in this world?
Facts are facts?
Facts. No, emotions are real. Emotions
No, I
is
think
one removed from spirit. I find that it is hard to trust others.
You shouldn't trust the mainstream media. You should start listening and
What
looking
media
into
then do you suggest? That is saying don't trust knowledge, operate in darkness.
No, go look up facts. Go look up actual statistics and facts. Look up Pew Research.
Emotion is real.
But emotions change, don't they?
The main difference between Dr. Dewey and me is that he judges a belief by its effects, whereas I judge it by its causes, where a past occurrence is concerned. I consider such a belief true, or as nearly true as we can make it, if it has a certain kind of relation, sometimes very complicated, to its causes. Dr. Dewey holds that it has warranted assertability, which he substitutes for truth, if it has certain kinds of effects. This divergence is connected with a difference of outlook on the world. The past cannot be affected by what we do, and therefore, if truth is determined by what has happened, it is independent of present or future volitions. It represents, in logical form, the limitations on human power. But if truth, or rather warranted assertability, depends upon the future, then insofar as it is in our power to alter the future, it is in our power to alter what should be asserted. This enlarges the sense of human power and freedom. Did Caesar cross the Rubicon? I should regard an affirmative answer as unalterably necessitated by a past event. Dr. Dewey would decide whether to say yes or no by an appraisal of future events, and there is no reason why these future events could not be arranged by human power so as to make a negative answer the more satisfactory. If I find the belief that Caesar crossed the Rubicon very distasteful, I need not sit down in dull despair. I can, if I have enough skill and power, arrange a social environment in which the statement that he did not cross the Rubicon will have warranted assertability.
All of my recent videos have either touched on or driven right balls deep down into the concepts expressed by Marshall McLuhan and kind of regurgitated by Timothy Leary about the medium and the message.
To operate your brain, you must understand how to use your eyes. Oh, say, can you see? Oh, say, can't you see what's being done to your eyes? Who controls your eyeballs controls your mind. Warning, 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 warning. Who controls your screens controls programs in your mind.
And when you're talking about words and even TV, there's a bit of an abstract concept to that. But when you're talking about a brick and mortar establishment like the LA museums and Philharmonic associations, you're talking about actual control. The type of control that will determine the recognized artists of the future, which can manipulate entire generations of artists. And what do we have?
In a twisted turn of events, Breitbart editor Milo Yiannopoulos has officially started a college scholarship exclusively for young white men. In the midst of Trump's presidency and the fear it brings to minorities, the scholarship seems a bit insensitive and out of place. According to the scholarship's website, the Privilege Grant is said to be for white men to gain equal footing with their female, queer, and ethnic minority classmates.
Immediately after selling his popular internet social network company GeoCities to Yahoo in 1999, Bohnett turned his attention to activism. He created the David Bohnett Foundation, a non-profit grant-making organization focused on providing resources for organizations pursuing societal change and social justice through activism, with an initial endowment of $32 million. According to the LA Times magazine, he invests where he can actually improve lives, empower individuals, and build viable communities in meaningful ways. To serve as executive director and strategist for his foundation, he hired Michael Fleming, who had been a media leader for the ACLU.
The State and Local Leaders Program at Harvard Kennedy School had been around for a very long time. But one constituency that clearly was missing, that wasn't represented in the room, were folks from the LGBTQ community. And I think Harvard made the decision, they wanted more of us in the room. Victory knew that we had to be in the room. And I think as a funder, you look and think, these are two amazing partners. If we bring them together, the change that will occur in the classroom, and the conversations that folks in the classroom are having, really will be groundbreaking.
Wow, my experience at Harvard, I would share that it's a really comprehensive approach to exercising leadership in government. The program brings together elected officials, appointed officials, people from various disciplines, and it's an invaluable experience for people, whether they are just stepping into elected office like myself, or they've been in elected office for 15 years.
We tend to be in our own sort of silos and boxes across our professional lives, but especially in public service. It's really beneficial for me and for us to have the perspectives of people from a whole host of walks of life, you know, the planner in Montana versus the Speaker of the Colorado House versus the Senate Majority Leader from Georgia. That really kind of is the glue that makes the program really work and tick and really valuable.
My first year before I took the fellowship program, I passed 12 bills, which I thought was pretty strong. In my second year after I took the program, I passed 20 bills.
Through his foundation and his personal efforts, Bohnett has long been politically active nationally, supporting and donating to political causes, ventures, and people he believes in strongly. His main areas of political donation and support have included LGBT politics, gun violence prevention, Diversity empowerment, supporting African American and Latino political involvement, political leadership training, voter registration, and the Democratic Party. The foundation also funds graduate school, civic internship, and leadership programs at the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, an LGBT-related program, the Gerald R. Ford School of Public Policy at the University of Michigan, and the Robert F. Wagner Graduate School of Public Service at New York University, and the UCLA Luskin School of Public Affairs.
The kind of diversity that they're bringing into the room isn't about policies, it's about who they are. And if a new member of a state legislature is suddenly spending 3 weeks with a lesbian or a trans woman or a trans man, the ripple effects are astonishing. We've seen it year after year after year, that merely the presence of having the Bohnett Fellows in the room changes how people think about that entire community.
It was a very life learning experience.
Victory Institute is making a significant investment in the people who attend this program on our behalf. The Bohnett Foundation is making a significant investment in the people who attend this program. But the individual office holders who attend this program are making an investment as well. They are taking 3 weeks away from demanding, very high pressure careers that are in the public eye. And they are saying, I'm going to commit fully to being present and learn as much as I can in the program because I want to be a better public official and I want to better serve the broader LGBTQ community. David Bohnett and the Bohnett Foundation deserve a very heartfelt thank you. The investment that they have made in leadership and in the future of our community is invaluable. And we see the impact of it every day.
In Detroit, New York City, and Los Angeles, the graduate students receive positions in the mayor's office, and their stipends and tuition are paid for by the Bohnett Foundation. These paid student interns have been involved in policy analysis and implementation, assisting speechwriting, evaluating department heads, reducing homelessness, and other initiatives. Several former Bohnett Merrill Fellows occupy management positions in the cities where they had interned, and in 2014, Stephanie Chang, a Bohnett Fellow from the University of Michigan, became the first Asian American woman elected to the Michigan State Legislature.
A Michigan legislator is apologizing for using racial slurs against her Asian American opponent for state senate. According to the Detroit Metro Times, State Representative Betty Cook Scott, seen on the left, used slurs, and I apologize for even repeating them, Ching Chang and Ching Chong, when referring to her opponent, State Representative Stephanie Chang, during a recent Democratic primary. Witnesses told the paper that during the August 7th election, Scott also referred to a campaign volunteer as an immigrant and said these immigrants from China are coming over and taking our community from us.
Now, contributions to a political party or a political campaign are not tax deductible, but that's a different case when you're setting up a foundation and calling them charitable contributions. And buying those favors probably comes a lot cheaper when you're training and placing your own politicians rather than keeping a rein on the backstabbing mercenaries we call politicians. Bohnett was a founding member of the Los Angeles chapter of the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, or GLAAD. He focused his strategy on lobbying entertainment and media companies to produce positive representations of gays. In the fall of 2000, at a political fundraiser at his home in Los Angeles that included a number of U.S. senators, he called for full equality for gays and lesbians, including same-sex marriage. And in 2004, he co-founded the Civil Marriage Collaborative to support marriage equality. He has supported major initiatives and donations to boost openly gay political leadership. The Bohnett Foundation has in particular been a major and long-term supporter of the Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund, especially its LGBT Leadership Fellows, aimed at training LGBT leaders for state and local governments. As of 2017, the Bohnett Leaders Fellowship at the Victory Institute has sent 118 LGBT leaders to the Harvard Kennedy School senior executives in state and local government program. The David Bohnett LGBTQ Leaders Fellowship alumni have included Kristen Sinema, the first openly bisexual U.S. congressperson.
CNN reported that in 2003, while she was on the radio, you said it was okay for Americans to join the Taliban to fight against us. You said you had no problem with that.
We're running out of time, but we have to let you respond to that.
I want to ask right now whether you're going to apologize to the veterans and me for saying it's okay to commit treason.
We are running out of time, so we got to get a response.
Well, we need a response because she owes us an apology.
Please.
Well, Martha has chosen to run a campaign like the one you're seeing right now,
It's
where she's
treason.
engaging in ridiculous attacks and smearing my campaign. And she's just trying to cut, and not share the full picture. But the truth is that I've always fought for Arizona, and I have been proud to serve our state in elected office for over 13 years. Arizonans know me, and they know my record.
As we see in this very quote, that the states are the laboratories of democracy, and then my state, Arizona, is clearly the meth lab of democracy.
People, and I say quite simply, Arizona coming to a state near you. Because it's true. Because over the past several years, people would watch what was happening in Arizona and be like, damn, those people are crazy. Is it something about the water? No, the water's fine. We stole it from Colorado. There's nothing wrong with the water. They're called Republicans. And I want to talk to you about some of the things that I think that you can do to stop your state from becoming Arizona.
And Anise Parker, one of the first openly gay mayors of a major U.S. city, Houston. As mayor, Anise Parker authorized the HERO Ordinance, which prevented discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. Opposition to HERO arose because the ordinance protected transgender residents' ability to use whatever bathroom they wanted. So when the mayor faced opposition to her new law, she chose to subpoena the sermons of the local pastors, seemingly with the intent of prosecuting homophobic statements. So it looks like we've come full circle and now the gays are persecuting the Christians. Fortunately, the subpoenas were withdrawn after more than 50,000 supporters signed a petition, and City Hall was flooded with telephone calls, letters, and emails.
Good morning. Good morning. I see y'all are the ones that aren't hungover from last night. Yay. Or else you're the early risers. Good morning. I'm glad to see so many of you here. It's not quite 9 o'clock. We're pretty close.
In 2012, Bohnett was appointed by President Barack Obama as a trustee of the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts, and in 2015, the David Bohnett Foundation donated $5 million to the Kennedy Center for its expansion project. Earlier in his career, he was invited to the White House by President Bill Clinton as part of his administration's efforts to encourage the development of electronic commerce over the internet. In 2018, the Bohnett Foundation partnered with the Biden Foundation and the YMCA of the USA in a joint 3-year effort to foster LGBTQ inclusion and equity at YMCA locations nationwide. This was just a cursory examination into the David Bohnett Foundation. For example, they've also funded the discredited organization Acorn, which is way up there in letter A on the list. I'd heard of James O'Keefe's video, but reading their wiki I never realized how many Acorn employees were convicted of fraudulent voter registration or other forms of election fraud, where they weren't just embezzling vast amounts of money, some of which was federal taxpayer funding. Elitist influence of arts and entrepreneurship might be fine if alternative artist funding like Patreon weren't shutting down users, credit cards and payment providers weren't censoring their political and business rivals, and there weren't hand-picked, groomed political candidates who believe that the more bills they can pass and the more taxes can be raised, the better. Like the Catalyst organization, featured in a previous entry to my Funding the Fall video series, their connections and centers of power are truly too vast to fully investigate. However, even a cursory glance into these extremely well-financed organizations leads to the depths you've seen here. And when it comes to politically biased organizations with a platinum grip on the art and media landscape, Bohnett is a small player. The only exception is that his focus is largely localized, focused on a few particular regions. This touches on something I uncovered when a public domain clip I used was not copy-striked, not claimed, but was tracked by one of, if not the, wealthiest media conglomerates on the planet. And for whatever reason, they wanted to know who was using that particular clip. They looked into me, so I looked into them. But that's a topic for another video. If you want more content like this and you want it better and faster, please help by contributing to the channel on Subscribestar or by sharing the video.